Welcome to this week's episode of Safe Room, your weekly source for horror gaming discussions and proudly part of Bloody Disgusting's Bloody FM podcast network. I'm your host, Jay Krieger.
And I'm the other one, Neil Bolt.
And as we're recording this episode on Alien Day of all days, and to follow up on the news of a follow-up to Alien Isolation, we thought that we would spend this week kind of theorizing about what a sequel to arguably the greatest Alien game ever made might look like, in addition to us sharing our personal favorite Alien games. Now, naturally, we have both adopted the major caveat of omitting the game that everyone probably assumes we would have on our lists, that being Alien Isolation, which I think actually makes it more of an interesting conversation because of just, the wide-spreading sort of nature of the Alien games that have been outside of that. But for Alien Day, every time this day rolls around every year, like, it just makes me think about when I got to go see Alien in the big screen for the 40th anniversary. And that's just like one of those core cinema moments, naturally, because, I was not born in the era with which that film was released in theaters. So, like, having that opportunity to see arguably my favorite horror movie on the big screen was like one of those blessed cinema outings. Do you have any experience getting to see the Alien films re-released in theaters before?
No, unfortunately, I've missed several other ones. I mean, the first time I actually got to see an Alien film in cinemas was with Romulus, which is a bit of a downer, unfortunately, in that sense. That, but no, yeah. I mean, I think by the time I was like very aware and into Alien films, like the first three had been out, and the anguish of knowing I'd just be too young when Resurrection was coming out, and having to wait and wait. I think that was like one of the first films I ever like rented off cable, sort of thing. Like I think it was then back in the day, because we'd only just got it, and it was like, God, yeah. So I must have paid some ridiculous price for that. And again, that was unfortunately a bit of a letdown. But and then I think obviously with the not sequels, the prequel things of Prometheus and Covenant, I think in 2012, like when that came out with Prometheus, it was like I was on honeymoon, and it was a choice of like finally getting to see either that or Avengers, and ended up choosing Avengers. So and then so it's kind of it evaded me so many times, and then every time there's been like anniversary screenings, I've not been able to go at the right time. But hey, we're only not far off another anniversary, I'm sure.
I mean, Aliens is this year.
Yeah, Christ. Yeah. I mean, this year's ridiculous in terms of how many films are getting that. I suppose that again, releases would be very different. You had that, I think, in the summer, and I think so we were August when that came out in '86. So they've not announced anything yet, but you never know. Disney having the rights, maybe there's a chance that they do it. But please would be my wording on that. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I was talking to you last week, I think, before we were recording. They're going to have a 40th anniversary screening of Aliens at the theater that's close to me, but I don't think it starts until about midnight, and it's the director's cut. And I have a feeling that my days of 3 a.m. cinema outings are behind me, unfortunately. So I think I'm going to miss that one. But yeah, getting to like see the original on the big screen, like just at the very least getting to experience that movie, the score with the big, beautiful surround sound and everything in the theater was just amazing. And so, it was a nice primer getting to rewatch like the original film this week just at home, and then thinking about, the history of all the games and trying to remove myself from some of the AVP games and think more just like about the games that are primarily focused on Alien, and getting to think about the different directions they've taken with that, the different gameplay styles, the different, not only like consoles, but I think overall like different perspectives and whatnot and what that adds. But the big news going into today was Alien Isolation 2 being teased and kind of like what that could look like. It was, of course, naturally very brief. But I guess for you, like, what did you kind of get out of that teaser, and what are maybe your hopes for a follow up to what is a pretty safe bet describing as the best Alien game ever made to like capture the true terror of Ridley Scott's original film?
Yeah, I mean, they made sure to sort of tell you one tiny bit of information, which is that the save system is intact from the original one, which I was saying to you before we start recording, kind of points me towards something in that Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus obviously did have a little wink and a nod to that phone save system in the film. And he used it as a background thing every time something was about to happen as well, like as a background point. And given it looks like it's on a planet this time, rather than given there's like rain and skyline, it's possible that it could be in that place, in that same colony where the characters from that film were from. Just given, like since the last Alien Isolation, obviously the whole franchise is now Disney's property, and they want to tie in with whatever they have got, and Romulus and Alien Earth are their things, so they would be like the obvious places to connect it to, given that the first game was more about Alien, and you're not really going to get to do Aliens because one, it's been done to death, and you can't really do a prequel, really, can you? I suppose. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's like, I would have said yes, it could have been on Hadley's Hope, but the skyline doesn't look the right color. It looks more like that sort of industrial sort of sky that you saw in the Romulus place. I can't remember the name of the colony. I think it was Ivaga 3, I think, is it? But something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
like
everyone knows what I mean if they watch the film anyway. Like that, the place where they're living and where they're under the thumb of the corporation, sort of thing. But I mean, when you think of like the chronology of it all, it would make sense to given Alien Isolation and where that takes place. If so, why not? I mean, my pick would be go to Fury 161 and do Alien Freeze setting.
Right.
I don't know why. I don't know how it would work, but I could just like.
There's a lot of promise there with that setting, I think.
Yeah, I think the limitations, the idea of the pursuit, and there's something you could do with something like that. But who knows? Maybe it's an entirely new thing, like they did with the first game, where they do go to places that we are familiar with, but they will have like a brand new place to sort of start it all off on. I want it to be a continuation of that part of the world, but I do think it will have to adhere somewhat to what they want to do with with the Alien franchise going forward in movies. I've been thinking this funnily enough about IO Interactive doing the Bond game, and thinking the fact that they're making an origin story sort of thing, it's like it feels like they're sowing the seeds for Amazon's MGM to sort of say, okay, this is the story we want to tell for the next new Bond and the reboot of Bond sort of thing. While the actor may not be the same when they do the film, it's like they'll have like a benchmark. And while we're in a different place with this, I think there will be people in the company sort of saying, okay, well, we want it to tie in with this that we're doing and this that we're doing, and I wouldn't be against that. Especially if it brings a bit more of the weirder shit that was in Alien Earth, like that would be cool. But a lot less of the pandering stuff from Romulus. That would be at least, So, some sort of midway point between that, like that. I'm less confident it'll be about the older films in terms of or those locations or those themes. I think we will be dealing with the Disney version of Alien, for better and for worse.
Yeah, I think that if anything, Alien Isolation proved that you can have some of that connective tissue to obviously the origins and the history of Alien and having a direct lineage, but at the same time, you don't necessarily have to be overly referential in a way that definitely Romulus was a victim of. I think so. I think for me, like if they're going to be doing a colony setting, I'm fine with it being very similar to Hadley's Hope, but being completely devoid from that specific connection. Like if they want to recreate Hadley's Hope as a setting and whatnot, and continuing clearly, as was hinted in the teaser, that like analog approach to technology and things like that was so pivotal in giving Isolation its identity that now it's come out the other end where it was actually like in the films. I think that if you continue with that sort of identity in that type of setting, that could be something really special. But I think that also like something from a gameplay side of things needs to be included that's reflective of the fact that now you're on a colony, like your planet side. So I think that that'll be interesting to see how they're able to incorporate that into the sort of stealth approach that the original Isolation had. I'm really not concerned with them having more of a connection to like the films and things like that. But I will be interested to see, how they're able to expand on the different facets of the stealth gameplay with that, different setting. Because if they don't do that, it's almost like, well, what does it matter if it's on a colony or a space station if the gameplay is unchanged, relatively speaking. So I think that will be interesting just to see like how they're able to retain that same approach to terror, intention, and whatnot, but giving the players a bit of a wider variety of options, I suppose, with how they navigate that setting.
Yeah, I do think the other thing is to look at all the horror games that have been kind of influenced by it in that time. Resident Evil is very much in that as well, I think. I do wonder if there will be more of an immersive sim style to it, just because I think there was a flexibility that could work. And when I say about like the whole Alien 3 side of things, like limitations and stuff, getting creative with your environment might be interesting in terms of how you go about things. I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, a lot of time's gone since then. Been a long time. I don't know how many people are still involved from that game. And Creative Assembly have been still doing strategy games ever since. But hey, yeah, like, that was the problem with the first one where like, God, the strategy people are making an Alien game. Doesn't seem like that will work like that. And it very much did. But yeah, so I'm excited. It almost didn't feel real till we've got a teaser either, which was, and it's the first time in a while that any sort of game teaser that short with so little information has made me just start thinking, oh, like what could this be? What could that be? But yeah, like the outside bit was like the thing that kind of made me excited the most. I think it's like, 'cause yes, it was the claustrophobic corridors and stuff. Great. I kind of like the idea of an outside thing as well, just to see how that works. And yeah, I guess we'll get to know more. When, I don't know, but a tease like that out of nowhere, hopefully this summer we'll get to see a bit more.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? I think for now we can just speculate, but I think that clearly with that teaser, like they were very deliberate in showing us some things that point to the future while at the same time still retaining what gave the original game its identity that kind of separated it from anything that came before it. So very hopeful for getting some more future looks at that. Granted, I'm very excited, but I'm also not getting too excited because given the state of development and things these days, it's like, oh God, I don't want to even think when we'll get our hands on this or even another more substantial look. But it certainly makes me excited to see, like, even if the team largely has moved on, seeing what we're able to pick up the pieces of the original and evolve on. So that's at least makes it a more memorable Alien Day than maybe the last few, given how the last film turned out.
Yeah, and in a way, I'm quite glad that in the years since we've not really had one like that at all. Like it's been very aliens focused and about swarms of them rather than like dealing with small amounts of threat with limited resources.
Yeah,
it's just makes it feel special again. I mean, as I'm sure we'll get into when we're talking about the games, is that there are so many that just take aliens as the influence point, and it's totally understandable because video games generally it's about shoot things with big gun, and yeah, that's Aliens. So it's like
Yeah.
compared to
Mm.
the first one, or even the third one. So yeah, it's a nice sort of change of pace, and I'm really just so interested to see what they've learned from the things that have been inspired by them as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like you said, this Alien Isolation's been a source of a lot of inspiration lately. So to see what the devs themselves have
Mm.
been inspired by in the decade plus since the original came out will be very interesting to see come to fruition. But yeah, now that we've kind of speculated on what the future looks like, let's take a look back and chat about some of our favorite Alien games. Other than of course the aforementioned Alien Isolation. So I think we both amassed a list that was about 3 picks from purely Alien
Yeah,
games. It would be very easy to do 5 or 10 if we were throwing in the AVP iterations, but we wanted to keep this solely the Alien realm of things.
yeah. It's like because like I was just saying, like there's very obvious things and that you can go to, and as much as we like how refreshing it is
Mm.
to have a game like Alien Isolation, we've covered it so many times.
Yeah.
Like at this point, it's like,
Yeah.
and let's be honest, it would be number one, and
Right.
that's in
Yeah.
any list. Not that we're doing this necessarily in any ranked order this time. It's just 3
Yeah.
games that kind of stood out, I think, for
Mhm.
us in different ways.
Yeah. But do you want to kick us off? What did you have on your list?
Um, so I'm going to go with the Sega Mega Drive / Genesis Alien 3 game
Hmm.
for me. I mean, when I talk about like how the Alien games generally tend up being more like Aliens,
Mhm.
like guess what they did with this one? They did not make it like the film. Let's put it that way. They made it. Ripley has a gun. She has flamethrowers. She has stuff like that. There was this kind of cool era of like these side-scrolling, like shooter type games based on film properties. There's like, as much as I've talked about that whole magazine thing I had with Resident Evil 2,
Mm.
like looking through the guide, like screen by screen by screen, predating that, in this era, you'd have magazines that would, because games are mostly in these sort of 2D sort of realms. You basically get like long lines of like screen to screen to screen to screen of these games, and like there was the Terminator game, the first film, that was like amazing, like just to look at, in those magazines. And this, where I was just again like fascinated by it because I
Mm.
was fascinated by the film as well. Yeah, it's a frustrating game. Like you basically, you if you've ever played a game like, there's a few games like this, where you go around, save the prisoners, get to the exit, kill the things as you go along, sort of thing. Simple stuff. Yeah, as I said, Ripley has guns here. It's not really so much about her being in like mortal peril and dealing with any kind of trauma
Mm.
from that, but as you would have expected. But no, it's got such a mood to it that worked so well for me, and even though it was so different from the film, that most people were probably quite happy about that. I think the game had kind of a lot of grumbles from people about it because it was quite hard, which it is. But yeah, I don't know. It had that sort of meanness and bleakness that,
Mm.
while not exactly the same as a film, it fed into that tone. And it was one of the first sort of video games of a film for me where I was like, oh yeah, this gets it. This feels like something, like, even if it isn't directly going with what it should do.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a nice one. Yeah, it's the Alien 3 bias. I mean, that I do love Alien 3, but yeah, given the fact this game is almost nothing like it, beyond the fact that it's the Ripley from that film, yeah, it's nice. I do like a nice side-scrolling sort of shooter. So an Alien one, great. Alien 3 one, even better.
Yeah, with this era of games, you probably didn't even have to preface it with it's a frustrating or difficult game because it just, even just by looking at it, I can tell that this is the type of game that was built around, if it was an arcade game, it would have been built around like draining you of all your quarters and whatnot. And I think that, we've talked briefly about movie games and things of those natures from this era, but it's like they were much more concerned with securing that license rather than actually producing anything that resembled the film itself. So
Yeah.
I think for back then, especially like making a Alien 3 game adaptation that played more probably like Aliens than Alien 3, because if it was Alien 3, it would be melee focused completely.
Yeah.
Probably made for a more entertaining game, but
Oh yeah. I mean, for all purposes, it is basically aliens because
Yeah.
even the final fight is against an alien queen, which if if you were going to pick holes in it, you go, well, that's not going to happen unless
Right.
sort of thing. But yeah, like I said, that it's best not to treat it exactly like that. It is like a faithful adaptation in any way, shape, or form. But it is very much like a smushing together of ideas. I mean, again, one of those early sort of uses of the motion tracker in the game as well was like kind of exciting. Like and just, even visually, like it just worked nicely for me. But yeah, it's one of those sort of flawed gems for me as well, which is probably the most fitting thing for a game based on Alien 3.
Well, to that point, like the idea that this was was this the first Alien game that you played that actually had the motion tracker? Because I feel like that would be huge, and that would actually probably lend a great deal of attention to what otherwise kind of just looks like Contra from the screenshots.
Yeah, I mean it's Contra, but like not as I don't want to say not as hard. It's a very different kind of challenge. It's like I don't know if you remember. There's a game on the Mega Drive called Flicky. Which is like saving birds from cats. Like it's while it's not exactly like that, it's just a lot of it reminds me of that in terms of like you can fail by running out of time, which is like sure, okay, but yeah, it just structurally doesn't feel like it makes sense at all in that regard. But hey, like I said, it's very much about the vibe of it and the fact that there is for all the adaptations of the first two films, that we've talked about, like this one getting one. Yeah, it's probably the least revered because I think even Resurrection got like a decent shout, like in terms of like it was a decent game, but yeah, as I said, it's a curio. I don't think you could go back to it and go, yeah, this is great or anything. But for me, definitely for me, it's very much based on whimsical feelings.
I think that's probably a safe bet that not many people return to this one with all that much frequency.
Yeah, that's it. But what about you, man? What have you got?
Yeah, so I think for me, I'll probably start with the entry that would be the oldest one for me, even though that's going to date me pretty significantly. That being Aliens Infestation for the DS.
This date you? My game was 1992. So
yeah, well, oh geez, yeah. So I guess for me, like this was maybe the second game that I picked up for my DS way back in the day. And it's one that unfortunately, at that time I needed extra cash. So I traded in with a stack of games that I would give a arm and a leg to still have for my collection. But yeah, this was one of those games that like furthermore just proved to me the timelessness of, Metroidvania style games, and having a Metroidvania style game in the Aliens universe that actually had like really terrific artwork and felt like it sort of like hit all of the high points of the original trilogy films for me. Most prevalent being Aliens, but at the same time, like you had this game that played like no other Metroidvania for me because of the fact that it was very much more action focused in terms of actually like featuring those components from the Aliens universe. So, you not only get to have the power loader fights, you not only get to shake off face huggers and whatnot, But you also get to like, I think you even encounter like androids at one point, and things of that nature that you get to fight, which again, like further speaks to how they would flesh out enemy encounters in later Alien games, while at the same time, like harkening back to that notion of like the relationship between humans and androids and things of that nature and the animosity there and whatnot that's been there since the very first film, right? With
Yeah.
how basically things being manipulated by the company, and that didn't just like wasn't only extended to humans, that was extended as well to technology and those things. So like getting to play a game like that when I grew up playing very classical Metroidvania style experiences, of course, Metroid and Castlevania and things of that nature, to have a game that was set in the Aliens universe that abided by that same sort of approach, for my favorite horror franchise, like was just literally one of those handful of games that just like felt like a dream come true, especially because at that time, for whatever reason, like I was completely unaware of it. And it's like I went to go pick up my DS at GameStop or whatever, and that was, on the shelf at the same time, and just being like, oh well, I was here to get whatever launch title captivated me, and now I've got like the true game that I really like wanted to play. So that was one of those experiences where it was just like, fuck, to have that in the palm of my hand. It made some of those bus rides early on in my college years that much easier, because that was definitely a game that I replayed numerous times, and just now I wish that it had gotten the same treatment all these years later as like the Mummy game that was a Metroidvania one that came
Oh
out.
yeah.
I don't know, like within the last 10 years. I wish that this had gotten that same treatment of just at least being ported to a console or PC at the very least. I'm sure there's ways that I could find it online, but yeah, this was just a tremendous, tremendous Aliens game for a handheld console.
Yeah, and I think that's another one of those weird sort of side stories to that disaster that was Colonial Marines. That this was the one, made alongside it, and ends up being not only the better one, but finished before that one as well. Which,
Yeah.
given everything we know, makes sense. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned about the Contra thing as well with the Alien 3, because of course Way Forward had developed a Contra game as well.
Yeah.
So with this one, but yeah, it's weird, and we might even come back to this later. But like the idea behind it, like that, games like the XCOM games would come with, of having your own personal squad that you can care for, and stuff like that, and kind of root for certain characters, and then be able, that you can lose them kind of permanently, is a really cool move, and especially for a game that's a DS game where you just don't expect that much for it. But yeah, I think it's really odd that it has been left to the DS like that. I guess the problem being that format and it being so particular. There's a lot of handhelds where like to adapt them can sort of lose a part of what they were. I'm pretty sure this is emulatable somewhere.
Yeah, it for sure is.
Given I've definitely seen certain DS games done like that, but yeah, I mean we're only almost 15 years off it coming out, so who knows? Maybe we'll get that anniversary sort of release somewhere, maybe on the Nintendo online store thing with the online virtual console, but I don't think they've done DS yet, so yeah, maybe one day. It's convincing Disney, I guess, at this point in the 20th century to like let it happen.
It's certainly on my bucket list, I think, in that regard. So we'll see. One day, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it just seems like it would be a no-brainer in the current environment, like the kind of game it is. Especially as you said, with stuff like, I suppose with the Mummy Demastered, it was like it was good, but because it was A, attached to a bad film, and B, still didn't really do much, for out there. I guess there's not as much clamor, but this is Alien, so,
Right.
always a chance that someone goes back and goes, yeah, we'll remaster that and adapt it somewhat. It's because I think it would fit absolutely would fit nicely. Even with the DS stuff, it's not like massive, is it?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Is that I don't imagine that there is an audience that's clamoring for Aliens Infestation to be more readily available. However, just having the Alien name attached to this, I think it makes it more viable than whatever went into making sure the Mummy Demastered ended up on, you know, more modern consoles, right? Like again, if anybody's played that game, it's like, yeah, it's okay. It's fine, I suppose, in terms of just being an average Metroidvania style game that, as you rightfully noted, is attached to a real shit film. But at the same time, this just having the Alien name on it, you would think would make it do worlds better, even if the audience size isn't there to necessarily titillate whatever Disney exec is in charge or something like that.
Well, especially because Way Forward had like done plenty of games like that in the years since, and they're still around. Quite rarity these days, but they are still around. And they've remastered all sorts of games. They did the Clock Tower remaster as well a couple of years ago. So why not get that team to go back and say, hey, we can sort of do stuff for that. They went back to Contra, so why not go back to this?
Well, like I said, one can hope. It's on my bucket list. But what else did you have on your list?
So I went with an arcade one, which is Aliens Extermination, which was, I think, 20 years ago-ish, when it first arrived.
2006.
But I don't think I played it till later. But yeah, it was really good. Like, again, because the unit has like the full-on rifle on it as well, it felt, I love a gimmick like that anyway. But sorry, cats were moving around behind me.
Oh.
But yeah, so it's just basically a late era sort of on rail shooter that you go around returning to Hadley's Hope, as we've been talking about, like after the fact, after the end of Alien 3 and wiping out an infestation there. And you basically just blast your way through all sorts of aliens, different types of aliens. And I mean, if you've played an arcade shooter, it's doing all the tricks. It's just because it's like from 2006, it looks pretty damn good compared to some of the stuff you might remember. And I think it's just the fun of holding that rifle to do it. It makes it like a unique experience in terms of like recreating that aliens feel. And the last time I played it was my son went to like this Play All You Like sort of arcade, which had like a whole bunch of stuff from years and years and years of arcade gaming a few years ago, and this was there. And I thought, oh, good chance to actually like play it without worrying about money, sort of thing. And it was a blast. Just to sort of 2-player as well, so it was a great time. I mean, not a lot to say beyond that. It's just aliens as a rail shooter, and that works. It's just but arcade booming soundtrack, pulse rifle in your hand. It was like, yes, that's that does the trick nicely.
Well, you're speaking my language with this one, because while I never played it, growing up in the early aughts and the last sort of like glory days of arcades, I feel like, especially in my area in Boston, we had arcades that had the best of the best in terms of 90s. So I had my fill of like light gun games. It was a lot of like Area 51 and Time Crisis and whatnot. They all were at that point basically like they got recycled from bars because they were all covered in cigarette burns and shit like that. But like this would have been exactly the type of thing that I would have pumped way too many quarters into, because of the fact of what you said, right? It's like, not only is it the name brand that I loved at that point, but that just the tactile nature of getting to hold a pulse rifle, right? It's one of those things where it was like, I think a few years ago, actually, for another anniversary, they made a pulse rifle official like Nerf gun from whatever that company is called that makes Nerf guns. And like now, if you look it up, it's online for like $500 a piece. And I so wish I had bought one, because like, again, just the fact that you could hold like a prop from our favorite film and it had that very much just like mowing through hordes mentality that we
Yeah.
love, and then throwing in a motion tracker and whatnot. Um, it's just like exactly the type of game that I would have spent way too much money on, which I probably would have spent more money on that than whatever the home console port rendition of it would have cost. But it still would have been money spent given the amount of hours of fun I would have had with it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the benefit, as I said, of like playing without coin warriors and stuff like that was getting to see it all as well, and like definitely does the finale stuff nicely as well. You know, you do the typical alien thing, do the self-destruct sequence, escape, have to face off against an alien boss and stuff. It's just, it feels so intense. Like, it is great stuff, and yeah, again, it's kind of the same way that like VR stuff is. It's something where you're best experiencing it more than anything else, and yeah, it's whilst being not aliens, it's still like the most aliens experience I think I've had in any sort of game so far.
Nice. What else did I have on my list? Let's see. I'll go with one that's probably closest to a an arcade shooter, and then we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll wrap with our our last picks. But for me, the next thing that I had on my list was a more recent game, which was Aliens Fireteam Elite, which I think that for all intents and purposes, like if you were to talk about it mechanically speaking, it's a pretty straightforward third-person squad-based shooter, right?
Yeah.
You get to amass a squad of it's like up to 3 or 4 different squad mates. You guys get to get your array of classes that have the various firearms from the game that we've all come to know and love. But at the same time, what I think works so well with this game that I think is going to be a nice primer for my final pick, which we'll chat about after the break, is the fact that this is a game that is all encompassing in terms of utilizing the Alien brand in a way that when you think back on the history of Alien games, so few of them actually do. And that is being all encompassing of the films, both past and present, and also the extended Aliens universe. That being like the Dark Horse comic books, which, I've chatted about previously, I'm a massive fan of, because of the fact that, you're not just fighting the drone xenomorphs and facehuggers and queens, but you're fighting the variety of xenomorphs that have never been in the films, that have only ever been in the comic book series. And, they've had the action figures and these things that, for whatever reason, the films just never delved into. But having all of these types of xenomorph bestiary offsprings, if you will, were able to present a game that, at the core of it, it was very straightforward because you're just, very linearly progressing through these environments. But it provided a greater deal, I think, of strategic challenges because of the different types of xenomorphs, but also you would be fighting a variety of like androids, which were present in isolation. And also just, it had a little bit more of that Prometheus vibe to it overall.
Yeah, especially in the DLC as well, which
Yes.
adds a lot more of that.
Exactly. And so like that I thought was a really great example of utilizing a brand and its all encompassing nature because of the fact that, a majority of the early Alien and Aliens games are only reflective of the films because, that's what basically is going to resonate with the majority of people. So it was not necessarily probably as advantageous for developers to like, oh, let's show people things they've never seen before, because what's the point? Unless you're like a really hardcore Aliens fan, that stuff is probably not going to do a lot for you. But with a game like Fireteam Elite, who gives a shit? You've got that license. You want to, you're making this game that essentially, has a live service feel to it because of the nature of how you'd extend content and the lifespan of that game. So throw in those extra things that add more challenge, add more variety to the experience. And I can't say that it's a game that I ended up spending more than probably 30 hours with, but that was a fun 30 hours that I spent with some of my best friends that are obsessed with Alien and Aliens the same way that I am. And so getting to play like a multiplayer shooter that I think most would probably say is like a squad-based shooter flavor of the month to a certain extent. Like it was nice to have this particular flavor that resonated so much with us. So I think for those reasons, like it's not one of the best Aliens games ever made, but I think it's one of the best utilizations of the Aliens brand in a multiplayer component to that. So for those reasons, it made my my short list of some of my favorite Alien games. Though I don't know, again, like I don't know, I would go back and play it anytime soon. But it was a really notable entry in that series for me.
Yeah, I think it's what you would call like the part of the Aliens Colonial Marines apology tour, where you end up with
Sure.
games that are like, yeah, let's try and do a better version of that, which is low bar, but it was probably the first co-op game to really try that. And I know at launch it was a bit janky and it did have its problems, but I think like any of those sort of games, it did sort of refine itself over time. And it's very much a throwback compared to most shooters at the minute, and it wanted to be, yeah, this is what you get, this is what you can do. Lots of alien stuff, as you said, doing all the comic stuff and like expanding beyond that as well does make it like great goofy fun, gives you good variety as well. Like and fucking Austin Wintory's score is like phenomenal stuff. Like really captures like that James Horner stuff from Aliens in a like a newly revised way. Yeah, that's always a bonus. Like when someone really understands the job and they don't just lift the soundtrack from films and stuff. It's grand stuff. And yet just the idea of feeling like a squad of Marines and actually having to be tactical, it, again, gets the ethos behind that series better than a lot of the games that I've tried in that time.
Yeah, no, that's a great shout because I think again, like given the love for the Alien IP that we have, I would much rather play something like this than I don't know. I don't want to say I haven't enjoyed my time with like the games like The Division, but something like this that you can enjoy and have that truly tactical squad based experience in more linear, smaller sort of outings and be satisfied by those. I think is the type of experience that I would gravitate towards more nowadays, considering the limited amount of time I maybe have to like squad up with people. So for those reasons, like I think that again, like it is probably the best version of an Aliens multiplayer game we could get. Because outside of something along those lines, I'm not really sure what that would look like outside of perhaps maybe somebody finally tries to do a Colonial Marines first-person squad-based follow-up with some justice, but that's not an endeavor I would wish upon anyone. But let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we can dive into our last personal picks for favorite Alien games. And we're back from our break, and Neil, what was your final pick for favorite Aliens games?
Well, yeah, I heard what you said, and I think we may have picked the same one, so this will be fun. But I went with Aliens Dark Descent.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, so you did as well.
Yep, that I did.
Which, yeah, again, a weird one. It doesn't feel like it should be real. An XCOM-esque sort of aliens game where you've got Marines and doing this sort of tactical battle stuff. Yeah, like I was excited about the idea before it happened, and I'm very skeptical about lots of games that try that stuff. Because as we've discussed many a time, XCOM is its thing, and other stuff doesn't quite hit the same way. But this is different enough in terms of kind of like half RTS, half turn-based sort of thing in how it sets up, that it has all the tension you need for an Aliens game. And it does also feel like a continuation of what they were doing with Fireteam Elite. It's a different developer. And in that you have different types of aliens and different things. And I really like this sort of era of Focus Entertainment publishing Aliens games, because as I said, they tie things in, they experiment with the ideas, and Fireteam Elite kind of rectified the wrongs, if you will, of Colonial Marines, but this, like, okay, what else can we do with this sort of thing? And to make it like this, I never would have thought they would have done it, but they did, and God, I loved it. It's brutal as well, as it should be, like in terms of all the things that you could expect from like having to fight aliens, and terms of like having to worry about like acid splash and different types of aliens having different attack patterns that you have to sort of set up for. Yeah, for this kind of setup, like I said, it could have been so hard to get right, given the pacing of that. But yeah, it really does just keep the tension ratcheted up, and I think the isometric perspective of that works incredibly well in terms of giving you lots of detail, but also just letting you still have bits and pieces of the world where you can't quite see what's going on, and just giving you that bit of doubt about what's coming. So, well, it's a grand old time, and I didn't think we could get an Aliens game that wasn't just a blast 'em up shooter that was this good and tense, as well. Like outside of Isolation, it's probably the most sort of dread-inducing Alien game I've played, I think, in all that time, just because it feels relentless and it feels like you are underpowered. Like even as you get better and do better things later in the game, it just feels really, really fucking difficult to get past this stuff, and it should. It absolutely should. Yeah. Like I said, I did not expect the best Aliens game I'd played to be one that wasn't a shooter. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, we both, as you noted, like have a great admiration, especially more so you than me. Like you've kind of like championed my love of or fueled my newfound love of like the XCOM series, right? And that notion of super hardcore turn-based strategy games. So to have that sort of methodology of gameplay applied to an Aliens game basically has crafted an experience that previously was unparalleled, I think, in terms of that outside of, like you noted, Alien Isolation, and to have it be squad based. And, I would say for this game, even more so than XCOM, like with XCOM, it's the type of thing where it's like you have a great deal of admiration for those characters when you're playing on, the more hardcore settings and things like Iron Man and whatnot. It's like, yeah, you feel each one of those deaths, but it's not like the same sense of terror that I find when I play Aliens Dark Descent, which, I was too busy this week to really like get to sit down and spend much time with it outside of maybe like an hour or so. And now it's like something that I definitely want to revisit for a future grab bag, just because even though we covered it previously, like it is a really special game, not only in terms of like being an Aliens game that does so many of the things that I love that Fireteam does, which again is expanding upon that xenomorph bestiary. But I think that really like it captures the terror of aliens specifically. And I think that that's a very rare thing to be able to do. The fact that you can go from, with Isolation, that very much channels the terror of the original film. And even though in Isolation, you get a revolver, a shotgun, flamethrower, like those things are not empowering in the same way that they are. They're more like tools for how you're going to navigate situations, but at no point in Isolation do I feel that I am empowered by having a shotgun or a revolver. It feels more like tools for like manipulating others in an environment or something along those lines. However, in like Aliens, along the same extent, like, yeah, you've got Colonial Marines, they're armed to the teeth, these badass Marines and whatnot. However, I'm walking on pins and needles the entire time, and I'm probably grinding my teeth to a detriment to my own dental while playing this game, because of the fact that you really do have to consider those same types of noise discipline that you have in Isolation, despite the fact you've got this badass fire team. And I think that for me, what allows Aliens Dark Descent to be, outside of course, Isolation, like my favorite Aliens game, is because of the fact that, it has that ebb and flow of the very best moments of like the film, where you have these moments of tension, of nail biting horror. And then you do get those kinds of like final stand moments in certain levels where you get to have these kinds of like, okay, you've alerted the horde or the hive. You need to set up your perimeter. I'm going to play sentry turrets. I'm going to have some guys over here to draw fire, covering fire with the smart guns and whatnot. And then you do have some of those cinematic moments where you get to basically run to your your evac zone, and you get to jump into the transporter and then peel out, or you get close enough to its sort of like radius, Overwatch radius, and then all of a sudden the smart guns on your transport begin to chew up any of those xenomorphs that follow you out of whatever building that you just like evac'd from. So it really is a game that I think captures the best aspects of the film, while at the same time like delivering unparalleled horror experience outside of isolation, as I said.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, little things that other games haven't been able to do as well, like the whole squad mates getting taken away sort of thing. And, it's constant terror, like I said, and the feeling like anything could be around the next corner or coming out of the next shadowy section. I mean, the story is what it is. Again, it feels very pulpy, sort of much like the comic book stuff. Again, borrows a lot from what Isolation started, in terms of like the Android stuff as well. But yeah, again, some really cool like alternate designs for Xenos and some other sort of enemy types as well that get introduced later in the game. Yeah, it's a decent enough story for what it's doing, and like I said, it allows the freedom to just add these extra cool little touches. I think it is at its best during the early hours, especially when you have got a more traditional sort of Alien setup. Even though the stuff that does come later is like interesting, like in terms of where it starts to feel more like, ironically, an XCOM game, where they start going, well, okay, so what can you do if you mix this with this? And yeah, like there's some nice nuances and tweaks and changes to it all. But yeah, I do think that this one, at its best, really does just exemplify everything that Aliens is in a way that it has been very difficult to do, clearly, over the years. So many attempts that we've had.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that as a last point. Like, I think that what it does really well that surprised me was not only utilizing more of, again, like the Aliens expanded bestiary universe from the comics and things, but it actually like, it not just like reveals more of that or utilizes more of that, but it actually expands on it by like there's like a new type of like xenomorph cyborg sort of like hybrid enemy that's introduced. And that was one of the coolest utilizations of a game building upon an IP in a way that, as far as I know, hasn't been prevalent in any of the extended universe aspects of, the Aliens universe. So for me, like, as a longtime fan, like that was just cool to see it the other way around, rather than the games building upon or introducing something that was present in the comics or the novels. Like this was a game just like creating something new. And I think that furthermore just speaks to like, there are other, series and whatnot that I think could really benefit from that type of approach of like, so long as it's something that feels like it could be an extension of a game's universe, like fucking go nuts, introduce that. And I think so long as it feels fitting, the fandom will be embracing that. And I think that just stuff like that is just like very cool to see a series that we all know and love evolve in new and exciting ways, even if by the end of it, maybe it devolves a bit too much into camp that's prevalent for a majority of the experience. Like, I still think that that's a really nice surprise for just like longtime fans who at this point, if they're like us, you've played a good deal of adaptations of Alien games and whatnot. You're like, yeah, I know basically everything that this has in store. You get thrown that curveball at the 12th hour and you're like, oh shit, okay. Maybe this resets my own expectations for what could potentially be around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. So, seeing as we've both picked that, and this makes for a very short half, I will say, maybe just to throw this in there as we didn't have that. What would you say is your favorite Aliens versus Predator game?
Oh yeah, it's a toss up between Rebellion's 2010 crack at Aliens vs Predator, which is a game that I have fond memories of, but I think I'm going to have to, I'll start by saying it's currently on sale on Steam as we're recording. So I think I'm actually going to pick that up maybe I'll chat about that for the grab bag in a future episode. And I'll go with Alien vs Predator arcade game from I think it was I'm pretty sure it was the 90s. Again,
Yeah.
my experience in arcades is very much tied to like older consoles finding their way into early aughts arcades in my area. But yeah, the Capcom Alien vs Predator game was one that I spent a ton of time playing. I had a very limited experience with the PC Alien vs Predator games, and I think that at the time, getting to play a side-scrolling Alien vs Predator game was right there in line with like
Yeah.
a side-scrolling arcade X-Men game and the Avengers game and even the Punisher game at a certain point. And I played God knows how many hours of Marvel vs. Capcom in the arcade on top of that stuff. So like, I think the AVP one would be probably my favorite because of the fact that it had that very classical 90s Capcom art style, which I was just obsessed with and, still am for all intents and purposes. But again, just getting to experience this crossover that at the time I hadn't read the Dark Horse comics, but it was like a dream come true. I loved the Predator films. I loved the Alien films. But to see these two sort of like horror titans and then have a human component to it as well, kind of like come face to face. That was a game again that I spent far too many of my parents' hard-earned dollars on and wish that there was a home console port for that. But again, there's plenty of ROMs that I could make that dream become a reality.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I mean, for me, I'd say as much as I do think the best ones are Rebellion's 99 one and Monolith's sequel to that. The first one I got to play was the Atari Jaguar version in '94 because my friend had one, Atari Jaguar. So it was which just, if anyone knows at the time, compared to consoles, everything was like wildly better looking. But obviously, the console costs like a mortgage in itself, and the controller it looked more like a phone than a controller. But my God, it was just like, it was mind blowing. This idea of like being able to play as these characters like this and seeing the alien and the predator like that. All the stuff in it definitely done better when Rebellion got to have a crack at it on PC like years later. But because obviously the Jaguar was a failure and we didn't get the sequel for this one. But for what is just generally a more pixel art heavy sort of first person shooter that, when you think about 1994 and the games around that time, it's amazing how good it looks at that point. It's a shame it had such a dodgy control system, but I do like the visual style of it. Like it's very gory, it's very and like the whole sort of HUD for each character as well. It just looks the most arcadey looking thing ever, and you just at the time it was so difficult to put into words quite how much better it looked than anything I'd ever played at that point. The price, as I said, being you would have to buy a stupidly expensive console that was going to die in mere years after that. But yeah, like as a starting point for everything Rebellion would do after that, it's just great. And yeah, it's one of those games that just lives on vividly in my memory in terms of its visual style.
Well, I think in that case, maybe we can try to plan on in the near future, getting to chat about Rebellion's 2010 crack at it. Because as we've been chatting, I'm picking that up on Steam because it's like $3 here, and it's one that I remember playing on a friend's 360, but not to the extent that I should have. And so, getting to see kind of like them return to an IP that they had a history with previously, and getting to see how that kind of was updated and adapted for the more modern consoles and things of that nature, I think would be cool reminiscence. Because while I certainly can appreciate the original AVP for PC and the fact that we got to tap into those three sides to that struggle, right? It's like it'd be one thing if it was just Alien and Predator, but we also got the Colonial Marine side of things. Like that really was one of those like all-encompassing types of games that I don't know, like it's not the same type of parallel to like bringing the comic books to life, but it is the type of thing where it's like, okay, we're going the extra mile, if you will,
Yeah.
in terms of like accurately portraying each side of that conflict in a manner that, you know, again, previously you'd only seen in the comic books, and so getting to have that kind of a thing um, for the more modern consoles, at least at the time when that stuff came out, is like again one of those really, really pivotal sort of, for me at least, like adolescent experiences of getting to play that on a home console was just so cool. And yeah, I would love to maybe revisit that in the near future because you know, while we love to bring our own separate things to you know, horror bites and whatnot, it's good every once in a while for us to kind of chat about stuff and that we've both been revisiting recently. So maybe we'll think about that for the future at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a strange old series as well. So, and
Hmm.
with a near universal sort of hierarchy in terms of its campaigns as well,
Yeah.
in terms of which ones are good. But yeah, I think we definitely should be revisiting that at some point.
Yeah. I think also just, you know, we're due for chatting about Alien games, you know, hopefully sooner rather than later with Alien Isolation 2 more or less being announced and whatnot. And so we'll keep tabs on that in addition to any other opportunities maybe we get in the future to revisit some older Alien games. But it was nice to have kind of a going down memory lanes type episode with some of our favorite adaptations of what I'd say is it's a pretty safe bet saying that's, you know, one of our favorite horror film series of all time.
Hmm.
There's more often than not, there's pretty entertaining, not always amazing, but always entertaining adaptations, I think, of that series and whatnot.
Yeah, which is fitting for a
Uh,
series that is very much
mm,
up and down in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you, if I look at my my audacity, like, yeah, we started this episode before we recorded, just saying to each other, like, yeah, it'll probably be a short one. And look at that, we are over an hour, but that's to be expected when chatting about again our favorite film franchise adaptations and games. But yeah, we'll be back next week with an all new grab bag of stuff we've been playing and whatnot. But yeah, until then, my friend, as always, it's a pleasure chatting horror with you for Safe Room.
Okay, my man. Until the next time.
Thank you for listening to this week's main feed episode of Safe Room. If you've enjoyed our horrifying discussions, please take a moment to rate and review the show on your preferred podcast platform, as this helps us immensely in ensuring that the show continues to grow. For any and all show updates and additional content, you can follow Safe Room on all of our socials, which are linked in the episode notes, at Safe Room Pod. And finally, you can send any and all emails to saferoompod@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.